Hey, what's up guys? So today we're going to be talking about the Yu-Gi-Oh! Banlist Wishlist / predictions for what I'm going to be calling September, what most people are calling September's new ban list. So anyways, let's go ahead and hop right into it. But in this ban list prediction / wishlist video, I also want to use another website that I haven't really showed off called Yu-Gi-Oh! Scope. It actually shows the win-loss percentage of certain cards and or decks that would see some play right now in the meta of the game. But anyways, that said, we're going to take that into consideration with some of our results, but let's go ahead and get something right out of the way. In fact, I was looking at my previous ban list, and I'm like, dude, this is exactly what I think, is similar to what we mentioned previously. So the first few cards I want to get out of the way, all of these are FTK-oriented cards, and I'd say let's just get them out of the way. At least that's how I personally feel. Now, Exodia is one exception. Like, I'm okay with Exodia FTKing because Exodia is so iconic to Yu-Gi-Oh! Now, moving further along, you don't see it super often as much anymore, I would say, but specifically Mystic Mine is a card that I have personally wanted to be gone for a long time, and when a lot of people also have, their ability to talk about what they want to just be removed in the game, I think a lot of people just don't like this card in its initial design. Now, I want to go ahead and just mention some of the other cards really quick over here that technically we mentioned in our last ban list video, but I still think that, these cards should be addressed here, but we'll also talk about, of course, the newer cards that recently came out into the game. So first off, this card has been here for so long, I'm still curious to know if we're ever going to go ahead and have this card off the ban list like, of course, the OCG has over here. In fact, a lot of these cards that we will be mentioning are going to be at one or multiple in the OCG here, as some of their metagame has kind of shifted to be very similar, so to speak. Next up, Ashgraph Sorcerer, Pendulums. Without the Electromite, they haven't necessarily been doing super hot, as a lot of other decks are simply able to go ahead and outpace them with not only consistency, but not really allowing them to completely go off. Now, there is still some decks that are going to be trying to make use out of Pendulums, but this would just kind of help out some of those decks a little bit more. This, we've already talked about it, probably don't need to talk too much more about it, but Block Dragon is one of those cards where it's just like, dude, you see it and you're like, oh my gosh, he's got me, and then like it just makes them able to extend some of their combos really hard, and then once you start getting rid of their stuff, they're like, oh sweet dude, Black Dragon again, and it's one of those cards where it makes you as a player feel very frustrated. So I think this card should just go ahead and be one of those cards that we just go ahead and eliminate. I know the previous ban list, when we talked about our wish list, they didn't hit it, and obviously that is due to it being more recent, but it's a card that I think a lot of people want hit. Speaking of things that a lot of people want hit, technically right now, if we go ahead and look at Yu-Gi-Oh! Scope, like one of the most popular decks that are actually doing well in terms of win-loss percentage over here, you guys can see that the meta has been relatively the same, with the newer edition, of course, the Numerons kind of taking, a foot over here in the meta of the game. Even if we look at the individual cards, there are still lots of other cards that we've basically been seeing over and over. Now, technically, I do want to mention with these cards, when you're looking at individual cards, some cards might not see that much play in every single deck, but the thing is that once they come out, they have a very high win percentage. Now, even when we're looking at some of the decks over here, we're not really seeing too much of the new or variants of the Infernal Knights, but I know that those will be very powerful, and I'll go ahead and touch upon them in a minute. But pretty much the meta hasn't really shifted too much, and that's why I'm mentioning, of course, the Adamantipator, and of course the Eldritch once again. You guys can let me know what you would prefer to be hit. I think Red Splatter is the card that more than likely would be the one to really hit. I mean, you put this to 2, it doesn't do anything. This card at 1 might hurt the deck quite a bit, and once you go ahead and get rid of it, then goodbye, man. But for the most part, I think that these are all contenders to be hit as well. Looking at some of those decks that will really combo heavy, getting rid of maybe some of these, or even the Hulk or Link Cross. Maybe getting rid of Hulk would be a good choice as well. Or Link Cross, like, I mean, heck, if they both went away, I would not be surprised, but at the same time, Link Cross is relatively new, so we'll have to wait and see if they will be hitting this. But it's just those combo decks that would just go into, like, ridiculous boards where they're able to go ahead and throw up. Usually it's some variant of Savage Dragon and or Hell of Arclight. This card has been seeing a lot more play, as it has that awesome effect where any monster is just going to go ahead and get banished instead. And it's a very easy card to make that can immediately shut down decks to the point where like they literally can't function. But speaking of basically any combo variant decks, things that would actually hurt a lot of these decks that would summon all these tokens and stuff, is technically Maxx C. This has been a card that a lot of people wanted to see off of the ban list, but I'm curious to know how you guys feel about this. I think if Maxx C comes back into the game, it needs some sort of an errata, and I think the errata would be like you cannot special summon your next, like during the next turn you cannot special summon and you can't control any special summon monsters. That way it's more meant for anti-meta-ish players, because even if, let's say, you are going second and you go ahead Maxx C and your opponent can't really make some plays, and then you go off, it's absolutely unfair. So I don't think the card can really come back to multiples. I mean, look at it in the OCG, it's at 3, and we can't even have 1. It is a little bit crazy, but again, I feel like the card is still really a little bit too OP in the sense where you shut your opponent down and then you can go off, or even vice versa, where you go off and then you throw Maxx C at them. It's just really hard to come back sometimes from those duels. Unless, of course, if you have the mindset of just decking your opponent out. There are so many decks that can special summon so many times where if your opponent, you know, has the ability to be stopped by just decking them out, by all means, just go ahead and do that, which is, I think, kind of a funny way to counter Maxx C. Now, Skull Corvette Joker has been a card that a lot of people wanted. Again, it just kind of goes with the pendulums. If we look at, again, what is necessarily, like, doing the best over here, and I know some of these numbers might be skewed because it is taking into consideration what is actually winning, and sometimes when you look at the meta of cards, sometimes there's a lot of bad players playing meta, so it lowers the win-loss ratio. But, you know, that's just how Yu-Gi-Oh is, and if we kind of use this as some of our data over here, we can kind of determine what cards come out, and we'll absolutely just kind of make it so it's difficult for players to even come back from. But yeah, I think that Pendulum just hasn't really been as popular as of recent. And then also the Necros over here, I think that they could technically get a little bit of a buff. I just wanted to put that card there. So if we go to Necros here in the TCG, you can see that everything is actually buffed up. Now, of course, Necros can be kind of mixed in, and I really wanted to mention this. There are a lot of variants that are mixing in the newer rituals with the Necros, which is something we'll have to kind of keep out an eye for. I didn't really want to mention it to be banned, or like necessarily something would be hit on this, but if they want to support the list over here, because I remember some people were talking about how this card is oppressive, and while there are lots of oppressive Yu-Gi-Oh cards, I don't think this will be hit. This is why I'm mentioning it over here. Sometimes I'll put cards here that I feel like they should not be hit and probably won't be hit, that a lot of people are talking about, and I'll go ahead and mention why. Like, for example, I'm putting this card here, not because it should be banned, because it is a very overpowered card, let's be honest here, but I'm putting it here because I don't think it will be banned, because I'm trying to incorporate some discussion. But as far as Necros go, even if we're looking at the TCG or even OCG over here, I mean, they got like full power over here. We're ready to go. And so I don't think that they will hit anything with the Necros, or really anything ritual related, as a lot of the newer ritual stuff is supposed to like kind of be generic ritual support. But moving on to the Invoked, this is still doing relatively well. You have Shadal, you have lots of just variants of Invoked, right? If we hit either one of these, I think that that could be a good little check for certain archetypes. Invoked Dragma is still a very popular deck, and it is relatively new. And heck, dude, I like how they reprinted some of the cards, and they're like, oh, still short printed, by the way. But moving on to the Dinosaurs, this is still a very popular deck. I legitimately think if you put these both to 2, it will kind of hinder the deck, obviously, at the end of the day. But I don't think it's going to make the deck anywhere near unplayable, and it's still like Ultimate Conductor Tyranno. I mean, that card is still insanely powerful. Now, going into things with like Union Carry, I don't think they're hitting Union Carry, but like if they just delete Union Carry, then these don't need to be mentioned. But like these can facilitate those really like unfun sort of duels, and I've never been a fan of these myself. Now, moving into Barrage for Zodiac, if we look at what else Zoo has that could potentially be taken off. I mean, Broad Bull is an absolutely insane card. Even Trident going to 2 would be really good for the archetype. To really help out facilitate Tri-Brigades, if any of you guys have seen that archetype, it basically mixes in the Zodiac engine very, very well. And if you go ahead and give them, like, let's say this goes to 2 and Trident goes to 2, I think the deck could be a little bit stronger at the end of the day. I guess this card should be moved over here. I mean, it's just mostly just talking about going for extra, like, additional combo plays. But this card, I don't think they will hit it. But I'm just trying to mention, like, something in this, like, variant of, you know, the spam token variant card decks. Something could maybe be hit with that. But anyways, going back to the Zoo, the Tri-Brigade, I think that this could easily be a card that could go to 2 to kind of facilitate some of their other engines over here. And even this card, if they decided to go ahead and put something in Zoo, I think would definitely be a contender over there. With, of course, Wind-Ups over here. Like, that card has been hit for, oh, I'm going to type in Wind Up, otherwise there's just going to be too many cards. But this card has been gone for so long. I don't know if either one of these can come back, but it would be kind of interesting to see if they put one of those, what would be more considered a wild card, come back into the game just to make people like, whoa, dude, they put that card back? You know, sometimes they just randomly put a card back. But I don't think both of these can coexist at the same time, but we'll wait and see if they decide to go ahead and do that. And the next thing I want to mention is the Flame Noble Knights, or the Infernal Noble Knights. Something could be hit in this deck. It is relatively newer though, so I feel like it probably won't be hit. I also think that Mercury can come off the ban list. There is a new ruling for this. It's basically an errata, and the card is absolutely not usable. You can only activate one trap card. And it has to be sent from the monster zone. Like, this card easily could come off the ban list, but nonetheless, that's there. Now, now I'm going to go into what I feel like is a little bit biased before I hop into the extra deck of cards. Honestly, I don't really like playing against other guys. I'm a 100% admit, it's one of the decks that doesn't, like, throw out a board and say, like, can you beat my board? I got so many negates. It's more just, like, slowly I'm bounced back a card. I just don't like playing against this deck. This is just my personal thing. I mean, sure, it lets most of my... If I play against Guys, I'm hitting that 10-minute ad revenue, which, you know, thank you, I appreciate Guys players. But I legitimately fall asleep when I'm playing against this deck because it's just so slow and it doesn't... I don't know, when you lose to Guys, it's only because they draw good, okay? I'm just biased, and I will 100% admit I just don't like playing against Guys. My other bias is the Destiny Hero Malicious, because I saw a lot more heroes back when Malicious was at 3, and I don't know if this would... I mean, technically, yeah, with, of course, the... Oh, what did they get their name changed? Umbrella? The Nemesis cards. These guys make the Mali really OP, and it's kind of related to like the warrior section of the deck. But like I mentioned, if they hit this, can we put Mali back at 3? Because I'm honestly biased. I like heroes, and this just makes heroes see a little bit more play. Heck, they can errata it, so like maybe you can only be playing heroes or something the turn you activate multiple. I don't know. They probably won't errata. They probably won't touch it. But I just wanted to see Mali. Most of this stuff is just like general Yu-Gi-Oh stuff that I think most players would agree with. But this one, these two, I'll admit, is biased. Alright, moving on to the extra deck. New Bronze just came out. They're really popular. Again, when we look at Yu-Gi-Oh! Scope, they're still doing very well. It's not fun to play against. I do admit, I think it should be banned. But if we're trying to do a prediction list, I think it's a bad prediction. Yeah, it's a good wish list to have this card. This card and this card are definitely cards. I think a lot of people think that, yeah, dude, the card's OP, it should be banned. But in terms of a prediction, I think these are bad predictions to be hit. These are okay predictions to be hit, too. I think even Herald of Arclight, it's just gotten to be, you know, one of those cards that would be a contender that some people just really find it to be annoying. You guys let me know how you feel about this card as well. As far as this card, it probably won't get hit, but it's just one of those non-interaction Yu-Gi-Oh decks that the same thing with like this card. These are cards that are very non-interactive. I mean, even to an extent, the Bow of Gladys over here, but I don't think this is a good prediction. This card is probably one of the only ones out of, like, this card's probably not going to be hit, but this card has some potential to be hit. This card probably won't be hit, but I'll mention it because, again, a lot of people want this card to go away. However, it's just recently getting reprinted, and if we're looking at, in terms of, like, just the distribution of Yu-Gi-Oh cards, some places don't get cards for a long time simply due to, you know, what's going on in the world right now, but I don't think this card would be hit, but I know a lot of people wanted this card to be hit, and there are ways to get around it, but it is a very oppressive card to deal with, again, for a lot of archetypes. Sometimes you get 4 negates on this card, it's just like, I quit, dude. Like, you see it time and time again. When someone summons this, if they don't have an answer, they just leave the game a lot of the times. And Dunlop could come back. It's just technically has that ability to go ahead and add that Yangzing negate. I mean, the OCG has had it for I don't know how long at multiple, but we can't even have one. It's just so crazy. Aurora Dawn, again, any combination of like one of these over here. But looking at like getting more support for, let's say, frogs or something. There was another thing. Penguins. This could be something that's kind of related to it. So I can definitely see this card going to 2 with the upcoming, of course, you know, more recent support for some of that little water stuff that they have. So I could see this card going to 2 easily. This hasn't really done anything. A lot of people wanted this card to come back. Honestly, I was kind of done with it, but I'll mention it. Predaplant, I think that it would be a really strange move for them to hit this. And the reason why I say this is because how do you make this card? The card that everyone wants to get. You make it with this card, right? It's just a no-brainer. I don't think this card would be hit, although this is definitely a card that could be considered to be hit later down the line, as I believe even if we go to the OCG over here, this card has actually gone to 1 over here. In fact, there were some players that were playing with triple and triple, and like that's wild because they just don't need the extra deck, and the RNG chance of getting this effect again is just like, it's difficult for, again, a lot of decks to deal with this. Once this gets to 4,000 attack, it's very hard to deal with, again, for some of the, especially the older archetypes. Anyways, I already mentioned the Union Carrier. It's just basically these cards, and then I already mentioned the wind-up card over here. I heard a lot of people talking about Savage Dragon being hit, because I did watch other Yu-Gi-Oh content creators' videos, and a few of them did mention this. And how I feel about Savage Dragon, again, like you were printing, these are like the chase cards, these are the expensive cards. I know this card just dropped down, like, it was like $80, not too long ago, and now because the announcement reprint, it's like $40-ish. But at the same time, like, this is a chase card that you want to get out of the set. Like, you want to get all of these. Why would you go ahead and hit it? It doesn't make sense to me in terms of a prediction list, but in terms of a wish list, I can understand. I mean, even when we look at some of the other decks that can throw it out, it has a pretty high win rate. If we just go to the Savage Dragon, we're talking about like win rate once these cards come out into the game. And I'm not sure if it would actually consider if the card gets negated, because it technically came out but it went away. But at the same time, a lot of decks end on like a Savage Dragon for the Omni negate, and then they have their Appaloosa to follow up with other negates. So I understand like why people would want this to be hit. Heck, there's a lot of cards in here like Chaos that are actually doing quite well. Like the more recent like Chaos Synchro card, that card actually has a relatively high win rate. It might be like the top 20 something. There's a few different Dragon cards that are also here. There's Herald of Arclight. Oh, my face is blocking it. I swear it's right here though. Anyways, it's towards the very bottom. But you can see that even that card has a 4% win rate. But even like Link Cross, all these like variants of the Rocket Dragon variants. And I also wanted to briefly mention this because I didn't, as you guys see, I didn't really incorporate any of the Dragon stuff. And I feel like since all the Dragon stuff is getting technically reprinted recently in the new Dragonian structure, starter deck, whatever, I don't think they're going to really hit anything. It would be kind of, again, backwards to hit some of the Dragon stuff, considering that's something else that they want to promote. But we'll go ahead and wait and see what they do with that. I'm going to call this video the September Banlist Wishlist prediction, because that's maybe when we'll be getting it, but who knows. Maybe, you know what they'll do for the list? They'll be like, alright, you know what we're going to do? We're going to go ahead and put McCready Destructor, he's off the ban list. GG guys, we'll see you next time. But I wanted to add a wild card, because I always like adding these, like, what the heck? Like, you know, to make people excited about a game and to have, like, a really good video, like, title, you know, Yatagarasu is back. Like, that would be really cool to see something come off the ban list that's just, like, wild and we would not have expected it. And my guess, I'm just going to go ahead and throw out a wild card over here, Yatagarasu. Like, do you guys honestly think that this card would be too OP to come back into the game? I mean, it's your normal summon, you have to get the attack with it, and it also is a spirit monster, so it will be returning at the end of the day. But, like, if you can't deal with Yata in 2020, what deck are you playing, man? I just feel like that it's too outdated to be viable in the game. At least that's my thought, and it's been banned for so long. And again, it would have that hype factor. But anyways, you guys can let me know what you think would be coming off the ban list, whether it's your predictions or even your wish list, but I kind of included both. I included my predictions, which is pretty much every card we mentioned, but my wish list, my personal wish list, was just these two. Anyways, take care guys, thanks for tuning in, and if you enjoyed the video, drop a like on it. If you're new here, subscribe, turn on the bell so you don't miss out on when the actual ban list comes out. I'll give you guys my reaction, my thoughts to it, but the ban list might be very small, and the reason why, guys, is there really hasn't been any tournaments recently. Obviously, there's the remote duels, but let's be honest here, again, with some distributors are getting their cards late, cards are spiking up in price because it's just hard to get cards. Anyways, I'll catch you guys next video. I'm going, and I'm out. Peace.